Alright, so this is our third bracelet in this series. So we have two already completed. So this is going to be bracelet number 3. There's 4 altogether that I'm going to be doing here. Basically what I'm wanting to do is I'm just going to use one of our scrap cords to lash around all of our laces. What we're starting with are 4 of the 15-inch long leather laces, and we have 15 donut beads, and these are out of Jasper. And these stones are roughly, it's 14 centimeters from side to side, so that's 14 centimeters on their width. And again, we've got a 2-foot cord of the wax linen for doing our Turk's head knot closure. So on this one is inspired by musical notes. So what I mean by that is the beads are going to line up as though it's a chord of music. So the first bead is actually going to take all 4 of our chords, and that's to keep things stable at the beginning, so we don't have to worry about doing any, we won't be doing any whipping on this particular bracelet because it's not going to need it. It's all going to be held in place by its beads, and we are going to be doing some half hitch knots with the leather cording as well. So the first bead, it goes through all 4 of our strands, and each bead after this is going through basically 2 strands. And what that's going to do is it's going to look like this. Oops, if I kind of keep from dropping my beads. So the next bead is going to go through 2 strands. The bead after that is going to go through one of the strand from the previous beads and one strand that hasn't any beads on it yet. So that's going to be our next bead is going to go through there. So the bead after that one is going to take the previous strand, which was the one from underneath here, and the remaining strand, going through the next bead. And now we're going to start working our way back up. So we're going to take the top strand and the previous strand from the other bead, and coming back in. And now we're going to take this one, which is that strand there, and one of the first strands that we started with, and going through the next bead. And you could see how our pattern is emerging, and to me it looks like musical notes, which was the inspiration for this, was musical notes. So now we're just going to continue the pattern, and in terms of the coloration of the beads and how they're being selected for going on here, I'm not actually watching. I'm just grabbing the next bead that's at hand. I'm not specifically choosing a bead for going on. And that way you get hopefully a good balance in the spacing of the beads, because there's variations in the colors. A lot of these, aside from the green, they've got a lot of red jasper in them, and some of them have got bits of brown. So it's a good variation in colors on the Jasper beads, which I'm very pleased about. So it adds, that little added interest to the entire bracelet. And again, as I add a bead, I'm choosing 2 strands and making sure I'm maintaining my pattern of my placement for my beads. So I'm always selecting 2 of the prior strands, and again making sure that the placement is coming out to where it's got this little bit of a wave going on here. And we're almost done. There are 15 of these Jasper donut beads used on this piece. And again, I bought these off of Amazon a few years ago. Alright, and so we're ending at the top again. We started at the top, we're ending at the top from our pattern going up and down, and then our final bead is going to take all of our strands. Alright, so now I'm going to take this little tie off of here because it's done its little job. And what I want is to see how even I am on my length for my cord. And I've managed to pretty much center this, which is good. So what I'm doing now is I'm pushing my beads together to get them as nice and tight as possible. Because now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a series of single half hitch knots. So the first one, it doesn't matter which cord you start with, because you're going, each one of your half hitch knots you're going to do with a different one of your leather strands. So I'm going to do my first half hitch knot and get it up as tight as possible to the last bead, and now it becomes part of the core for all the other cords. And I'm going to take my next cord that I'm doing the half hitch knot with, so it's over the top, around the back, and through the loop that you've created, and you're going to bring it up nice and tight to the prior knot. And you'll notice how the knot itself is not matching up with the prior knot, and it's supposed to be like that. That's the whole purpose. It's creating this additional bit of randomness. Now we know that we've tied with these 2 cords, so our next cord is going to be one of the remaining. So we're doing 4 half hitch knots. So it's just the half hitch knot, and it's capturing all the other cords that we've tied knots with. And again, now we're doing our last cord, and we know we haven't tied a knot with this one because it's the longest. So that's a clue. We're so clever. So again, half hitch knot, we're going to go around and over the top and through our loop. And we're going to bring it up and tie it as tight as we can to the prior knots. Alrighty. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to use our little scrap cords to tie this off to keep things in place while we do the square knots on the other end. Once we finish everything, we don't have to worry about our knots coming loose because they'll all be secure, but for right now, because of the nature of leather, it will try to untie itself, so we need to give it a little bit of help to encourage it to stay tied. Now we're going to go to the other end, and again I'm making sure our beads are pulled up as tight as possible to each other, and we're just going to randomly select our first cord for doing our half hitch knot. So alright, so at this point again we're going to create a Turk's head knot to use for its slip knot, and I will be doing that off camera, and I will come back when it's time to slide our Turk's head knot back onto this bracelet, and we'll take it from there. Alright, here I have it, Turk's head knot. I'm about to transfer it onto the bracelet. So again, just going to shove the cords into the bottle. Now I don't really need to do it this way. I choose to do it this way because it just makes it simpler for sliding the Turk's head knot onto the 4 cords. I could actually have taken the Turk's head knot off the bottle and just lace the cords through it. It's just a little bit faster this way. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the other end of our cords and come through from the opposite direction through our Turk's head knot. And again, we're pulling it up nice and tight to where our cords are overlapping, where we have our little spare cord for securing our knots in the leather. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to untie this and retie it around all 8 strands that are here, again securing everything so I can work on the Turk's head knot without having a bunch of flappy things going wacky on me. Now it's going to be time for pulling out the slack from our knot, and I'll be working it from both directions to get these cords that are coming out, our tail cords, even on length. Alright, so here it's done. I've got the Turk's head knot completely finished. I did wind up going around it 4 times for tightening. Then I did the single knot and then went around retracing all of the leads a 4th time all the way around. So now we're taking off our little stabilizers, and now the last thing to do is to actually cinch up this knot as tight as possible so we could tie knots at the end of each of our leather strands. What this does is it gives us as much leather as possible to work with for this overhand knot, and it's just a simple overhand knot. What it does is it finishes off the strand. I don't believe we need to trim any of these strands here. I think they're all good lengths, and there's no excess for trimming off on this one. So it's just a matter of doing the overhand knot and pulling it as tight and getting it as close to the end as possible. Okay, and there we have it. And you see how our laces slide in and out of our Turk's head knot easily. And you will notice over time these knots will loosen up a bit, but they will stay in place, so it's not to worry. So there we have it, bracelet number 3. It's our musical note Jasper donut bead bracelet. Alright, I'll be back in a little bit and we'll start the 4th one.